It is Sunday, July 12th, 2026, and this is The High Road, Logistics and Leadership. I'm Jules Sterling, and I keep the contracts from unraveling.
I'm Dan Miller.
I'm Buck Reynolds.
And I'm Elena Rossi. We have a great show for you today.
Yesterday, we dove into Venezuelan air bridges and Walmart's nuclear bet. But today, we're tracking a record-breaking surge at the ports and a solid industrial shift in Texas.
Let's start with the ports, because frankly, it's a disaster waiting to happen. According to the NRF, U.S. container imports for July are forecast to hit 2.47 million TEUs.
Which is a new all-time record.
Right, but it's not because people are suddenly buying more stuff. It's a strategic scramble. We're looking at a July cliff where shippers are front-loading everything before the Section 122 surcharge expires on the 24th.
I mean, the thing is, the ports can't actually handle that kind of spike without the gears grinding to a halt. I've seen this movie before.
Exactly. And it gets worse. The USTR is looking at new Section 301 tariffs based on forced labor. If those hit in August, we're talking about a 10 to 12.5% tax that might stack on top of existing duties.
Look, it's a classic chess move. Shippers are paying higher spot rates right now just to avoid a permanent tax hike in August. They're basically gambling that the cost of the congestion is cheaper than the cost of the tariff.
From the account side, my clients are panicking. They're not just asking for capacity, they're begging for it. It's sort of a frenzy, right?
It's a compliance nightmare. If you're rushing freight through the door to beat a deadline, the paperwork usually suffers. And when the paperwork suffers, my phone starts ringing.
Here's the deal. If we keep pushing the ports to 110% capacity, we're just moving the bottleneck from the water to the gate. The drivers are the ones who pay for that in idling time.
Bottom line is, we're seeing a record-breaking month, not because of demand, but because of fear. It's a volatility cocktail, right?
Actually, it's a risk management failure on a global scale. We're trading long-term stability for a 2-week window of avoidance.
Speaking of long-term plays, let's look at Texas. Toyota just dropped a $3.6 billion bomb in San Antonio. They're doubling the footprint of their plant, adding 2.5 million square feet.
Which is just, wow. That's a lot of concrete.
It is, but the real story is the Tacoma. They're moving the majority of the mid-size pickup production from Mexico back to Texas. By 2030, San Antonio is the primary hub.
I mean, I like it. Bringing the jobs back home is one thing, but the logistical shift of moving an entire assembly line is a beast. It's not like you just put it on a flatbed and drive.
Right, but look at the math. They're jumping from 200,000 units to 350,000. That's a massive increase in regional outbound freight. And we're talking about the Texas Triangle, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio becoming an industrial super hub.
The 2,000 new jobs with a $32 average wage, that's a huge win for the local economy. It makes the whole region more attractive for the secondary logistics players.
I suppose it is. But from a risk perspective, you're concentrating your assets. If a weather event or a grid failure hits the Texas Triangle, Toyota doesn't have a backup plan in Mexico anymore.
Maybe, but the USMCA uncertainty is the bigger risk. Toyota is hedging against potential tariff bills that could run into the billions. San Antonio is the new safe harbor.
The thing is, this isn't just about Toyota. When a giant like that moves, the satellites follow. RJW Logistics and Gulf Coast Crating are already expanding in Dallas and Houston to service this made-in-Texas economy.
Right? It's sort of like a gravity well. Once the anchor is set, everything else just gets pulled in. It's actually a very elegant strategic realignment.
Exactly. It's not just a plant expansion. It's a regional reconfiguration of the supply chain.
Hey, before we move on, A quick note from our sponsor. Strategic logistics requires world-class engineering. This show is powered by the stack developed by Eric Christensen at Neural Network Media. Support the architect behind the code. Visit our Patreon at patreon.com/neuralnetworkmedia for a free trial and access to our daily briefing PDF.
All right. Well, while we're talking about the future, we have to talk about the 2027 EPA NOx mandate. This is the one that's keeping fleet managers up at night.
Actually, it's not just the managers. It's the insurance companies, too. New tech means new failure modes.
My thing is, the EPA wants an 80% reduction in nitrogen oxide. That's a massive leap. We're seeing a huge pre-buy cycle right now where carriers are scrambling to buy 2026 models before the 2027 regs hit.
Look, the window is closing. I'm seeing reports that 2026 build slots are nearly 90% full. If you haven't locked in your units, you're essentially volunteering for a price hike.
And it's not just the cost, it's the reliability. PACCAR is already updating software to raise the DEF limp mode speed from 5 to 25 miles per hour. That's a huge admission that the current emissions enforcement is too aggressive.
If I may, the problem is that complacency leads to catastrophe. If drivers start ignoring derates because the limp mode is more lenient, we're going to see more roadside breakdowns and more liability.
I mean, come on, Elena. A truck moving at 5 miles per hour on a highway is a hazard in itself. Raising it to 25 is just common sense for safety.
It's a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. The real issue is the complexity of these engines. We're adding layers of technology that the average shop can't service.
Bottom line is, the market is pricing in the 2027 regs. We're seeing a spike in capital expenditure now to avoid the operational headache later. It's a classic hedge.
You know, I'm seeing this in the contracts too. Some of my retail clients are starting to ask if their carriers have a fleet renewal plan. They're worried about capacity drops if the 2027 transition is rocky.
It'll be rocky. It always is when the government tells you how to build an engine without asking the guy who has to drive it.
Switching gears to the money side of things, we've got some interesting movements in M&A and restructuring. FedEx is finally cleaning up its balance sheet.
Right. They're settling those $4.1 billion cash tender offers. It's the final step in the FedEx Freight spinoff. They're basically stripping the house down to the studs so they can build Network 2.0.
I'm more interested in the risk side. Did you guys see the MVT verdict? $104 million. That is a staggering number for insurance fraud.
Here's the deal. That's why you see brokers purging high-risk authorities right now. Nobody wants to be the one who hired a chameleon carrier that resets its MC number to hide a bad safety score.
I've noticed that. There's a lot more scrutiny on the vetting process lately. It's not just about the rate anymore. It's about the audit trail.
And then you've got STG Logistics exiting Chapter 11. They're coming back with a stronger balance sheet just as the intermodal market is heating up. That's a perfectly timed exit.
If they actually fixed their internal controls, sure. But emerging from bankruptcy doesn't mean the operational rot is gone. I'll believe the recovery when I see the claims data.
Well, you know, from a relationship perspective, STG is trying to signal that they're a stable partner again. It's a bit of a PR climb, but they're making the effort, right?
It's a smart play. They're positioning themselves to grab the overflow from the port surge we talked about earlier. They're essentially playing the rebound. All right, let's get into the big one. We need to talk about the industrial renaissance happening right now. We're seeing a massive floor under the freight market, and it's being driven by the OBBA, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
I still can't get over the name of that bill. But man, the money is real. A $1.5 trillion defense budget?
It's staggering. And here's the key. 80 to 85% of that increase is for procurement. We're talking weapons, munitions, and armor. That is a direct injection of demand into the flatbed market.
Actually, I find the scale of it concerning. When you pivot the economy toward defense procurement at this level, you're creating a distorted market. We're seeing flatbed spot rates holding at $4.30 per mile,
which is a lifeline for carriers who were drowning in the recession.
Exactly. For the first time in years, the flatbed guys aren't fighting for scraps. They're hauling heavy munitions and construction materials for new defense facilities.
But look at the risk. You're moving high-value, high-danger cargo. The insurance premiums for hauling munitions aren't exactly cheap. The revenue is there, but the liability is astronomical.
I've had some of my industrial accounts mention that they're seeing a shortage of specialized equipment. It's not just any flatbed, it's the heavy haul gear that's in demand.
That's the AI connection. It's not just defense. We're building these massive AI data centers across the interior that require steel, concrete, and electrical transformers. All of that moves on flatbeds.
I mean, the thing is, the infrastructure is finally catching up to the tech. You can't have a cloud without a massive amount of physical steel in the ground. I've seen the loads coming out of the mills. It's a sea of gray.
My concern is the sustainability. What happens when the OBOBA funding cycles end? We're building an entire sector of the logistics economy on government spending. That's a dangerous game.
Maybe, but in the short term, it's a total game changer. We're seeing a structural shift. The industrial renaissance of 2026 is being led by the things that actually have weight. Rail intermodal is recovering because the volume is too big for trucks alone.
Right? I'm seeing the rail yards filling up again. It's not the pandemic-era chaos, but it's a healthy kind of busy. It's the first time in a long time that the rails and the roads are actually working in sync.
It's sort of a perfect storm, isn't it? Defense spending, AI infrastructure, and reshoring like the Toyota move. It's like the whole country is deciding to start making things again.
That's the bottom line. We're moving away from just-in-time globalism and toward a more resilient, domestic industrial base. It's a high-stakes transition, but the numbers are finally moving in the right direction.
I'll remain the skeptic. High growth usually means high risk, and we haven't seen the first major correction of this new cycle yet.
Now it's time for The Week Ahead, our Sunday segment where we map out the strategic moves for the coming 7 days. All right, freight market participants, grab your calendars. We're moving into the heart of July, and the board is shifting fast. Here are the 3 moves you need to watch next week. First up, Wednesday, July 15th, J.B. Hunt's Q2 earnings. This is the ultimate litmus test for the intermodal recovery. If they beat on volume, the great pivot from truck to rail is no longer a theory. It's the reality for the second half of the year.
I'm curious to see if the port congestion is eating into their margins, or if they're actually making money on the chaos.
Exactly. Then, also on Wednesday, we have the EIA Petroleum Status Report. With the Strait of Hormuz reopening, we're looking for the first physical signs of a fuel price cliff. If we see a sustained drop in Brent prices, fuel surcharges might finally stop being such a drag on shipper budgets.
Which would be a relief, though I suspect the carriers will fight any quick drop in surcharges to protect their margins.
Oh, absolutely. And finally, the countdown to the July 24th tariff cliff. Shippers have exactly 12 days left. Expect a final frantic push for inland capacity this week as everyone tries to clear customs before the new forced labor tariffs trigger in August.
It's going to be a wild week for the brokers. My team is already bracing for the phone calls.
My personal watch list pick? Keep your eyes on the Laredo-San Antonio corridor. With the Toyota news, that's not just a truck story. It's the birth of a North American super hub. If you're not positioned in South Texas, you're missing the biggest play of the decade. That's the week ahead. That's a wrap.
That does it for us today on The High Road.
We've covered everything from the July tariff cliff and Toyota's Texas gamble to the $1.5 trillion defense boom fueling the flatbed market.
Later.
Bye.
Peace out. Keep the shiny side up, everyone.